Good morning. It's Wednesday, June 9th. Oh, yesterday I read something about Joe Manchin and his position on the new voting law, which is called the For the People Act. Joe Manchin, the maverick senator from West Virginia. And Joe Manchin has categorically said that he is going to oppose the For the People Act. That's the bill that's ready to impose a variety of election-related laws on states across the country. And Joe Manchin feels that if we do that, if we oppose these laws, it will make it easier, not more difficult for voter fraud. Now, without Manchin's vote, this law is definitely not going to pass. But what I don't understand is why he is saying that this law will make it easier for voter fraud, when he readily admits that the way the election laws have been set up by the states is clearly partisan and is designed to keep the majority party in that state in power forever. So I don't understand his opposition to this law. And maybe it will make it easier for people to vote. But maybe that's the whole problem with the things we do in this country, because we don't take into account the unintended consequences quite often. So if we're going to make it easier for people to vote, that's a fine thing. And if we want to have mail-in ballots as a standard procedure, that's also fine. And the whole issue is wrapped around the contention of voter ID. Supposedly, according to Manchin and his followers, this voting law is going to make it so easy that a person could vote in every single district in his state if he wanted, because there's not going to be any real formal voter ID situation. The only thing this law supposedly requires is that I come in and I sign a document that says I am Stan Braunstein and I live in Smithtown, and then I should be allowed to vote. I don't think that the people who wrote the For the People Act could be that stupid to believe that all you have to do is walk into the voting area and sign an affidavit, and then you can vote. And then maybe that would be okay if when you signed that affidavit, it went all over the world, and you couldn't sign another affidavit to say that you were living in Ohio or Cleveland or Detroit or wherever the hell it would be, right? That's insane. So here's what I think. I think that this bill should contain the rules and regulations that the states are supposed to follow. Is that so difficult that every state should be allowed to have all the voting methodologies available to the citizens of that state? But they should also all have the same rule. Everybody should have a voter ID of some kind, a driver's license. If you don't drive, then you go to Motor Vehicle Bureau and you get an ID card. There are many ways to get IDs for people. And so everybody has the same type of ID. Maybe there's 4 or 5 different ones that are allowable. And then in addition to that, you need to have proof of residence. It means that I have this ID and I live in Smithtown. And every state should have the same equivalent. And every mail-in ballot should essentially be the same. And it wouldn't hurt if we had a universal election processing system that every state used, instead of having 50 different versions of voting systems. So I'm sure that Manchin is partially correct in some of his assumptions about For the People Act, because I am absolutely sure that in this act we have not put forth anything that will protect us against the possibility of unintended consequences. And ballot boxes should all be the same. And the hours for voting should all be the same in every state. Now, I know some states only have 1 million people living in it, So they probably can have some hourly restrictions that are different than, say, New York or California, where you got millions and millions of people who vote. But those things are easy to overcome. The basic rules for voting should be the same, no matter where you vote. Now, right now in New York, we're going to do this ranked voting choice, or ranked choice voting, whatever the hell it's called. Now, that's different. That's a different methodology to apply to counting, but we're only going to use that for the primary. And maybe we'll see that if it works well, we could use it for the general elections also. As I said before, only Maine uses that in their general elections. Now, I personally believe that there was no fraud in the last general election. And I don't believe that there has ever been a major fraud in any election that was run in this country. So if it wasn't for the fact that our previous president carried on like a lunatic about being cheated and having lost a rigged election, and the mere fact that 70% of the Republicans believe that, that's why we have to have this For the People Act in the first place, which is ridiculous unless it's done properly. It's also ridiculous that the Republicans are trying to create election systems that guarantee victory for the Republicans by limiting the ability of many classes of voters to vote against them. So while we pretend to be a democracy, we're running around like chickens without our head. And while Joe Manchin might be partially correct, and I'm sure he's certainly doing this because his constituency is primarily Republican and he's a Democrat, so he's a foreigner in his own home state, but he has a constituency and he has a job that he has to protect, and he's partially correct in his assumptions. So I don't think it's a good thing that the For the People Act is probably going to fail, but it might be better than having a poorly written For the People Act. So I leave you to think about all of that stuff. And I leave you to think about something else, because this is my 64th wedding anniversary. So think about that for a while. It will make you happy to know that some people can stay together for a long time. That's probably contrary to the way this country is running right now. Anyhow, that's all I want to say today, and I will see you in the morning. Bye.